Hello and welcome to where every story feels like a conversation over a warm cup of coffee. Settle in, dear reader, for a tale of mystery and deduction woven through the fog-laden streets of Victorian London, where Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, unravel a most perplexing case: the corpse in the crystal railway carriage. Chapter 1. The Lady in Distress. Hello and welcome to Lift, where every story feels like a conversation over a warm cup of coffee. Settle in, dear reader, for a tale of mystery and deduction woven through the fog-laden streets of Victorian London, where Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, unravel a most perplexing case: the corpse in the crystal railway carriage. It was a bleak November evening in 1888, and the fog that cloaked London was as thick as I had ever seen it, swirling like a living thing beyond the windows of 221B Baker Street. The gas lamps outside cast a feeble glow, their light swallowed by the miasma that pressed against the panes. Within our rooms, however, the atmosphere was one of cozy familiarity. The fire crackled in the grate, casting dancing shadows across the cluttered bookshelves, the chemical apparatus on Holmes's table, and the violin that lay carelessly across his armchair. I sat at my desk, my pen scratching notes on a recent case, a trifling matter of a stolen necklace, hardly worthy of Holmes's genius, while he lounged in his chair, his long fingers steepled beneath his chin, his eyes half closed in that peculiar state of reverie that often preceded his most brilliant deductions. The clock on the mantel had just struck 7 when a sharp rap at the door broke the silence. I glanced at Holmes, who remained motionless, save for a slight quirk of his brow that betrayed his curiosity. Mrs. Hudson, our ever-patient landlady, entered, her expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. "A lady to see you, Mr. Holmes," she said, her tone suggesting she had little patience for visitors at such an hour. "She's in a dreadful state, and I couldn't turn her away. Not in this weather." Armchair opposite his own, his eyes already scanning our visitor with that keen intensity that missed nothing. "I am Sherlock Holmes, and this is my friend and colleague, Dr. John Watson. You have come, I presume, with a matter of some urgency." The lady sank into the chair, her movements slow and deliberate, as though each action required great effort. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, her voice low and trembling, "I am Lady Eleanor Marwood, and I come to you with a matter most dire. My brother, Sir Reginald Marwood, was found dead this morning, and I am convinced, nay, I know, that his death was no accident." Holmes leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with sudden interest, like a hound catching the scent of its quarry. "Compose yourself, Lady Marwood, and tell us everything. Omit no detail, however trivial it may seem." She lifted her veil, revealing a face of striking beauty, though marred by grief. Her eyes, a deep hazel, were red-rimmed, and her pale cheeks bore the traces of recent tears. She could not have been more than 30, yet the weight of her sorrow made her seem older. "My brother," she continued, "was found in a private railway carriage, the crystal carriage they call it, for its glass-paneled walls. He was alone, the doors locked from within, and yet he was stabbed through the heart. The police are baffled, but I cannot accept their talk of suicide or mischance. Reginald was not a man to take his own life. And the carriage, it was his pride, his creation. Someone murdered him, Mr. Holmes, and I implore you to uncover the truth." I glanced at Holmes, expecting to see the faint smile that often accompanied a case of such apparent complexity, but his expression remained grave. "Describe this crystal carriage, madam," he said, his voice calm but insistent. "Its construction, its purpose, and its peculiarities." Lady Eleanor drew a shuddering breath. "It is a marvel of modern engineering, commissioned by my brother's company, the Marwood Railway Syndicate. The carriage is unlike—" Reginald was a powerful man, and power breeds adversaries. His railway syndicate was in fierce competition with others, particularly the Cresthaven family, who control rival lines. There were rumors, whispers of financial troubles, of deals gone sour. But Reginald never spoke of such things to me. He was guarded, even with family. "Financial troubles," Holmes repeated, his eyes narrowing. "And these rivals, were they capable of violence?" "I cannot say," she replied, her voice breaking. "But last week, he received a letter, one he burned after reading. He was agitated, unlike himself. I begged him to confide in me, but he only said, 'Eleanor, some secrets are better kept in the dark.'" Holmes rose abruptly, his lean frame casting a long shadow in the firelight. "Watson, fetch your coat. We shall accompany Lady Marwood to the scene at once. The fog may obscure the streets, but it shall not cloud the truth." I stood, my heart quickening at the prospect of action. "The station is some distance, Holmes. Shall we summon a cab?" "A hansom will suffice," he replied, already donning his greatcoat and deerstalker. "Lady Marwood, you will guide us to King's Cross, where this crystal carriage awaits. Every moment we delay, the trail grows colder." As we descended the stairs, the fog seemed to press closer, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps like ghostly fingers. A hansom cab materialized from the gloom, its driver muffled in a scarf, the horse's hooves clattering on the cobblestones. We climbed aboard, Lady Eleanor sitting rigidly beside me, her veil lowered once more. Holmes sat opposite, his eyes fixed on some distant point, his mind no doubt already piecing together the fragments of this enigma. The journey to King's Cross was slow, the fog forcing the driver to navigate with caution. The streets of London were a maze of shadows, the gas lamps casting pools of light that did little to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. I thought of the crystal carriage, its glass walls a stark contrast to the circumstances. That, Watson, is the heart of our puzzle. Lady Eleanor stirred, her voice barely audible. Reginald was proud of the carriage, but he was not a vain man. He believed in progress, in transparency, literal and figurative. He wanted his work to inspire trust. "Trust," Holmes echoed, his tone thoughtful. "A noble aim, but one that often invites betrayal." The cab rattled to a stop, and through the fog I glimpsed the looming arches of King's Cross Station. We alighted, the cold air biting at my face, and followed Lady Eleanor toward a private siding where the crystal carriage stood. Even in the dim light it was a striking sight. Its glass walls gleamed like a jewel, reflecting the flickering lanterns of the constables who guarded it. I felt a chill that had little to do with the weather, for within that transparent tomb lay a mystery that would test even Sherlock Holmes's unparalleled mind. Chapter 2. The Crystal Carriage. The fog that enveloped London seemed to thicken as our hansom cab rattled to a halt near King's Cross Station, its iron arches looming like specters in the gloom. The air was damp and heavy, carrying the acrid scent of coal smoke and the distant clatter of railway engines.
Lady Eleanor Marwood, her veiled face barely visible in the dim light, led us toward a private siding where the crystal carriage stood, its glass walls glinting under the flickering gas lamps like some fantastical relic from a bygone age. I, Dr. John Watson, felt a shiver that was not entirely due to the November chill. For the carriage, though a marvel of engineering, now bore the grim distinction of a murder scene. Sherlock Holmes, his greatcoat billowing slightly as he stepped from the cab, surveyed the scene with his usual intensity. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, darted from the cobblestone path to the constables standing guard, their lanterns casting eerie reflections on the carriage's transparent walls. "Watson, observe the setting," he murmured, his voice low but vibrant with anticipation. "A stage of glass where every act should be visible, yet a murder has been committed unseen. This is no facts." He gestured toward the carriage and we followed, Lady Eleanor trailing behind, her steps hesitant as though the sight of the vehicle pained her. The crystal carriage was indeed a marvel, its walls of thick, transparent glass framed in gilded brass, reflecting the lantern's glow in a kaleidoscope of light. Through the glass I could see the interior. Plush velvet seats, a polished mahogany table, and, slumped in one corner, the body of Sir Reginald Marwood. He was a portly man in his 50s, his face frozen in an expression of surprise, his waistcoat stained dark with blood where a dagger protruded from his chest. The sight was jarring, made all the more surreal by the carriage's opulent clarity, which seemed to mock the opacity of the crime. Holmes entered the carriage first, his movements precise and deliberate. The door, a heavy slab of glass and brass, swung open with a faint creak, revealing a lock of intricate design. No scratches, no signs of tampering, Holmes noted, running his fingers along the mechanism. "The key, you say, was found in the victim's pocket?" Lestrade nodded, producing a small brass key from an evidence bag. "Right here, Holmes. The lock's a custom job, designed by Marwood's own engineers. Only one key exists, and it was on him." Holmes took the key, turning it over in his gloved hand before returning it to Lestrade. A single key, a locked door, and a glass-walled chamber. Yet a man lies dead. Curious. He knelt beside the body, his magnifying glass appearing as if by magic, and examined the dagger. Its hilt was ornate, inscribed with a crest that featured a lion rampant entwined with ivy. "This crest," Holmes said, "belongs to the Cresthaven family, does it not, Lady Eleanor?" She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Mr. Holmes. They are rivals to our syndicate. But surely you don't think—" "I think nothing yet," Holmes interrupted, his tone sharp but not unkind. "I observe. Watson, note the angle of the wound. The dagger and telling as a shout in a silent room." Holmes replied, his tone dry. He continued his inspection, circling the carriage's interior, his gaze darting from the velvet seats to the mahogany table, where a single glass tumbler sat, empty but for a faint residue of amber liquid. Holmes bent close, sniffing delicately. "Whiskey, and of a fine vintage. Sir Reginald was not drinking alone, perhaps, or he was expecting company." Lady Eleanor gasped. "My brother rarely drank. He was fastidious about his habits, especially in public settings like the carriage." Holmes nodded, filing the information away. He then examined the floor, his fingers brushing the polished wood beneath the seat. "No scratches, no signs of a struggle," he murmured.
Yet the dagger's angle and the lack of blood suggest the killer was both precise and familiar with the carriage's design.
We stepped outside, where the fog had thickened, curling around the carriage like a living shroud. Holmes paced the siding, his eyes scanning the ground. He paused near a set of railway tracks where a faint indentation in the gravel caught his attention.
"A boot print," he said, kneeling to examine it. "Narrow, well made, and recently pressed. Not a constable's tread, nor a worker's. Someone was here, Watson. Someone who took care to tread lightly."
Lestrade, growing impatient, crossed his arms. "What's your theory then, Holmes? A ghost slipped through the glass? The carriage was locked, the key in Marwood's pocket, and those walls, nothing gets past them unseen." Holmes straightened, his expression inscrutable.
"Theories are the refuge of the unimaginative, Lestrade. I deal in facts, and the facts tell me this. The murder was planned with care, executed with precision, and designed to appear impossible. The glass walls are not a barrier but a challenge, meant to taunt us. The smudge, the boot print, the whiskey. These are threads in a tapestry yet to be woven."
Lady Eleanor, who had remained silent, spoke up, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve.
"Thought." Holmes no doubt constructing his mental map of the case, Lady Eleanor grappling with her grief, and I marveling at the audacity of a murderer who could kill in plain sight, yet leave no trace. Back at 221B, as the fire warmed our rooms and Mrs. Hudson brought tea, Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling upward like the fog outside. "Watson," he said, "this case is a study in contrasts, transparency and deception, opulence and violence. The crystal carriage is not merely a setting, it is a statement. Our killer wished to make a spectacle yet remain unseen. That is where we shall begin." I nodded, my mind racing with questions. The locked carriage, the dagger's crest, the mysterious smudge. Each clue was a piece of a puzzle only Holmes could solve. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I felt the weight of the mystery settle over me, as heavy as the fog that cloaked London. Chapter 3. The Railway Magnate's Secrets. The fog that had clung to London like a spectral shroud lingered into the following morning, casting a pall over Baker Street as Sherlock Holmes and I prepared to delve deeper into the mystery of Sir Reginald Marwood's murder. The fire in our sitting room at 221B crackled softly, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill of the case that now consumed us. Holmes, seated at his cluttered desk, was surrounded by a chaos of papers, letters, telegrams, and newspaper clippings, his pipe sending curls of smoke toward the ceiling. I, Dr. John Watson, sat opposite, sipping tea and reviewing my notes from the previous evening's examination of the crystal carriage, my mind still grappling with the impossibility of a murder committed in a locked, transparent chamber. Holmes's eyes, sharp and restless, flicked from one document to another, his fingers moving with the precision of a conductor orchestrating a symphony. "Watson," he said without looking up, "the Cresthaven crest on the dagger is no mere coincidence. It is a thread, and we shall follow it to the heart of this labyrinth. Sir Reginald's death is not an isolated act but part of a larger tapestry. Commerce, rivalry, and, I suspect, betrayal, and the cries of street vendors. The Marwood Railway Syndicate's offices were in the heart of the city, a grand edifice of stone and glass that spoke of wealth, though I noted the faint air of neglect, peeling paint on the window frames, a cracked pane in the door. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of ink and polished wood, and the walls were lined with maps of railway routes crisscrossing Britain,
their lines like veins pulsing with the lifeblood of commerce. We were ushered into the office of Mr. Percival Grayson, the syndicate's chief accountant, a wiry man with nervous eyes and ink-stained fingers. He rose to greet us, his manner polite but guarded. "Mr. Holmes? Dr. Watson?" he said, adjusting his spectacles. "Lady Eleanor informed me of your involvement. A terrible tragedy, Sir Reginald's death. How may I assist you?" Holmes wasted no time. "Mr. Grayson, I require access to Sir Reginald's financial records, correspondence, and any documents pertaining to recent dealings with the Cresthaven Syndicate." Grayson hesitated, his fingers twitching. "Those records are sensitive, Mr. Holmes. Sir Reginald was particular about confidentiality." Holmes fixed him with a piercing stare. "A man is dead, Mr. Grayson, stabbed in a locked carriage of his own design. Confidentiality is a luxury he can no longer afford. The records, if you please." Reluctantly, Grayson produced a ledger, its pages filled with columns of figures that told a grim tale. The Marwood Syndicate was hemorrhaging money. Debts to creditors, delayed projects, and a series of failed investments in colonial railways. Holmes's eye scanned the pages with alarming speed, pausing at entries marked with cryptic initials. "These payments to J.B., he said, pointing. "Who is J.B.?" Grayson paled. I don't know, sir. Sir Reginald handled those transactions personally. I assumed they were consultants or suppliers." Holmes's expression remained impassive, but I sensed his mind racing. In a hurried scrawl, "Beware the saffron veil." I frowned. The saffron veil? What could that mean? A warning, perhaps, Holmes mused. Or a threat. The paper is of fine quality, the ink expensive. This was no idle note. He tucked it into his pocket, continuing his search. Beneath a stack of contracts he found a small notebook, its pages filled with cryptic symbols. "A cipher," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. Sir Reginald was no stranger to secrecy. As we left the office, Holmes's attention was drawn to a map on the wall, detailing a proposed railway line through the Midlands, a route that overlapped with one controlled by the Cresthaven Syndicate. "Competition," Holmes murmured. "A motive as old as commerce itself." Our next stop was the Cresthaven Syndicate's offices, a short cab ride away. Their headquarters were even grander, with marble floors and chandeliers that gleamed like stars. Alastair Cresthaven, the head of the syndicate, greeted us with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He was a tall man, impeccably dressed, with sharp features and a manner that suggested both confidence and calculation. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said, offering a firm handshake. "I was grieved to hear of Sir Reginald's passing. He was a formidable rival, but a friend in better days." Holmes's gaze was unrelenting. "A friend whose dagger bears your family crest, Mr. Cresthaven. A curious coincidence, would you not agree?" Cresthaven's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "A relic, perhaps, stolen or planted to cast suspicion. My family has no shortage of enemies, Mr. Holmes, and I assure you, I had no hand in this tragedy." Holmes nodded, his expression unreadable. "Of course. Tell me, what dealings did you have with Sir Reginald in recent months?" "Business, nothing more," Cresthaven replied smoothly. "Our syndicates competed for routes, as you know. Reginald was stubborn, unwilling to compromise. But murder? That is beyond the pale. As we spoke, I noticed a ledger on Cresthaven's desk, its pages open to a series of transactions.
Cresthaven is involved, though to what extent remains to be seen. As we returned to 221B, the fog seemed to mirror the murkiness of the case, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps like secrets waiting to be unveiled. Holmes settled at his desk, the charred letter and ciphered notebook before him, while I pored over my notes, trying to piece together the fragments. The Marwood Syndicate's financial woes, the Cresthaven rivalry, the mysterious saffron veil. Each was a clue, but to what end? Only Holmes, with his relentless logic, could hope to unravel it. Chapter 4. A Foggy Pursuit. The morning after our visits to the rival syndicates dawned with a fog so dense it seemed to swallow the very light of day, turning London into a labyrinth of shadows and muffled sounds. At 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes was already in motion, his energy a stark contrast to the languid haze outside. He paced our sitting room like a caged panther, his pipe clenched between his teeth, the smoke mingling with the steam from his untouched cup of coffee. I, Dr. John Watson, sat by the fire, nursing a cup of tea and reviewing the notes I had taken during our inquiries. The charred letter with its ominous warning, "Beware the saffron veil," lay on the table between us, alongside the ciphered notebook from Sir Reginald's office. The Cresthaven crest on the murder weapon haunted my thoughts. A deliberate clue or a cunning misdirection? Holmes stopped abruptly, his eyes alight with that familiar spark of discovery. "Watson," he said, "a message has arrived from one of my irregulars, a street informant who frequents the dockside taverns. He claims to have seen a man matching the description of Alistair Cresthaven's secretary, John Barlow, in a public house near the Thames. Barlow was seen in heated conversation with a cloaked figure, and he fled when questioned. This is no coincidence. We must pursue this lead at once." I set down my cup, my pulse quickening at the prospect of action. Barlow. The initials JB in the ledger. Could he be the recipient? Gray, gas lamps flickering like will-o'-the-wisps, guiding us through the murk. The cries of vendors and the rumble of carts were distant, as if the fog itself conspired to silence the city. I glanced at Holmes, who sat with his eyes half closed, his mind no doubt mapping the case's intricacies. "What do you expect to find at the tavern?" I asked. "Barlow, if we are fortunate," he said, "or at the least traces of his passage. A man in flight leaves marks, Watson, even in a fog as thick as this. The cloaked figure he met intrigues me. Could it be a member of this saffron veil, or Cresthaven himself?" The journey to the docks was slow, the fog forcing the driver to proceed with caution. The air grew heavier with the scent of the river, brine, tar, and the faint tang of fish. As we neared Wapping, the sounds of the Thames became audible. The creak of ships' rigging, the lap of water against the wharves, and the occasional shout of a dock worker. The Black Anchor Tavern emerged from the mist, a squat, weathered building with a sign creaking in the breeze, its windows glowing faintly with lamplight. We alighted, and Holmes paid the driver with a nod. "Wait here," he instructed, though the man seemed disinclined to linger in such a place. We approached the tavern, its door weathered and scarred, the air inside thick with tobacco smoke and the murmur of rough voices. The patrons were a motley crew, sailors, dock workers, and a few shadier figures huddled in corners. Holmes scanned the room, his keen eyes cutting through the haze, while I felt the weight of curious glances upon us. A barman, burly and bearded, polished a glass behind the counter. Holmes approached, his manner casual but authoritative. "Good day," he said. "We seek a man named John Barlow, secretary to Alistair Cresthaven. He was seen here last night, in conversation with a cloaked figure. Have you any information?" The barman's eyes narrowed. "Case. A man of modest means, yet this is fine silver. A gift, perhaps, or payment for services rendered. He is our quarry, Watson, and he is close." As if on cue, a shadow moved at the alley's end, a figure darting into the fog. "There!" I shouted, but Holmes was already in pursuit, his long strides eating up the distance. I followed, my boots slipping on the wet cobblestones, the fog disorienting my senses. The figure ahead was swift, weaving through alleys and past warehouses, but Holmes's agility was unmatched. He vaulted a low crate, his deerstalker remaining improbably in place, while I struggled to keep pace, my breath coming in gasps. The chase led us deeper into the docklands, where the fog mingled with the river's mist, creating a veil that seemed to mock our efforts. The figure, Barlow, we presumed, glanced back, his face pale and panicked in the fleeting light of a gas lamp. He ducked into a narrow passage, and Holmes followed, his voice sharp. "Stop, Barlow. We mean you no harm." But the man only ran faster, his coat flapping like a raven's wings. We emerged onto a wharf, the Thames lapping darkly below, its surface a mirror of the fog above. Barlow hesitated, trapped between us and the water, then scrambled up a pile of crates toward a warehouse roof. Holmes was upon him in an instant, seizing his collar and pulling him down with a force that belied his lean frame. "Enough, Mr. Barlow," Holmes said, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've led us a merry chase, but the game is up. Why do you flee? And who was your cloaked companion?" Barlow, panting and disheveled, glared at us, his eyes wild with fear. "I've done nothing. I don't know you, and I don't answer to strangers." Holmes held up the cigarette case, its silver glinting in the dim light. "This is yours, is it not? Engraved with your initials, and far beyond your means. You met a man here last night, spoke of a carriage and a veil. You know something of Sir Reginald Marwood's death, and you will tell us." Barlow's defiance stepping back. "You've told us enough for now, Mr. Barlow, but you will remain in our sights. Return to your duties, but know this. If you flee again, I shall find you, fog or no fog." Barlow nodded, scrambling to his feet and vanishing into the mist. Holmes stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the river. "Watson," he said, "the saffron veil is no mere phrase. It is a symbol, a sigil of a group with sinister intent. Barlow is a pawn, but Cresthaven, he is closer to the board's center than he admits." As we made our way back to the tavern, the fog seemed to lift slightly, revealing the grim outlines of the docks. The cigarette case weighed heavily in Holmes's pocket, a tangible link to the mystery. The chase had yielded fruit, but the tree of truth was far from fully harvested. Chapter 5. The Cipher in the Pocket. The fog that had plagued London for days lingered stubbornly as we returned to 221B Baker Street, its tendrils curling around the gas lamps like ghostly fingers, as if conspiring to obscure the truth we sought. The chase through the docklands had left my nerves frayed, but Sherlock Holmes seemed invigorated, his mind alight with the new clues we had uncovered. The silver cigarette case engraved with John Barlow's initials rested in his pocket, a tangible link to the shadowy dealings surrounding Sir Reginald Marwood's murder. I, Dr. John Watson, settled into my armchair by the fire, my notebook open, ready to record the next steps in this perplexing case. The air in our sitting room was thick with the scent of Holmes's pipe and the faint crackle of the hearth, a cozy contrast to the chill of the mystery that enveloped us. Holmes stood at his desk, the charred letter and the ciphered notebook from Sir Reginald's office spread before him. His eyes, sharp and restless, darted between the documents, his fingers tracing the cryptic symbols in the notebook, as if they might yield their secrets to his touch alone. "Watson," he said, his voice low but vibrant with purpose. The note Barlow delivered to Sir Reginald, marked with a saffron sheet of paper and a pencil, sketching out a grid to map the cipher's symbols to the alphabet. I watched, fascinated, as his mind attacked the problem with the precision of a surgeon. "The first step," he said, "is to identify patterns. Ciphers, even complex ones, rely on repetition. Observe the frequency of this symbol, a circle with a cross through it. It appears most often, suggesting it represents a common letter, perhaps E or T." For hours Holmes toiled, his pencil scratching across the paper, his brow furrowed in concentration. I offered what assistance I could, cross-referencing the symbols with known cipher systems from his extensive files, but my efforts felt feeble compared to his relentless focus. The fire burned low, and Mrs. Hudson, sensing the gravity of the moment, brought a tray of tea and biscuits, which went largely untouched. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, muffling the sounds of Baker Street, as if the world itself held its breath. At last, Holmes leaned back, a gleam of triumph in his eyes. "Eureka, Watson," he exclaimed, holding up the deciphered text. "The message is clear, though its implications are anything but." He handed me the paper on which he had written, "Meet at midnight, Crystal Carriage. Trust no one." I stared at the words, a chill running through me. "A rendezvous," I said. "But with whom? And why such secrecy?" Holmes paced the room, his pipe forgotten. The note Barlow delivered, sealed with the saffron veil, likely contained this same message or one similar. Sir Reginald was lured to the Crystal Carriage under the pretense of a secret meeting, only to meet his death. The cipher suggests he was cautious, encoding his plans to protect them from prying eyes. But who was he to meet, and why did they betray him? I considered the possibilities, my mind racing. Could it be Alastair Cresthaven? The dagger bore his family crest, and Barlow is his secretary. Holmes shook his head. "Too obvious, Watson. The crest is a distraction, a red herring meant to divert suspicion. Intensity that signaled a breakthrough. The carriage itself is the message, Watson. Its glass walls proclaim transparency, yet conceal a deadly secret. The killer wished to make a spectacle, to demonstrate their power while remaining unseen. It is a paradox, and paradoxes are the lifeblood of deduction." He turned to the charred letter, holding it to the light. "This warning, beware the saffron veil, suggests Sir Reginald knew he was in danger. He burned the letter to protect its contents, but not before committing its essence to memory, or to this cipher. The notebook's symbols were his insurance, a record of his suspicions." I leaned back, my mind reeling. So the cipher was his defense against betrayal. But who betrayed him? Barlow? Cresthaven?
or someone within his own syndicate? Holmes did not answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the notebook. We need more data, Watson. The cipher gives us the what, but not the who or why. Barlow's role as a messenger is clear, but his fear suggests he is a pawn, not a mastermind. Cresthaven's involvement is likely, but his polished demeanor hides his true motives. We must also consider Percival Grayson, the accountant, whose nervousness betrays more than mere grief. As the clock struck midnight, Holmes rose, his energy undiminished. Tomorrow we shall pursue 2 lines of inquiry. First, we must learn more about the Saffron Veil, its members, its goals, its methods. Second, we must revisit the crystal carriage. The smudge on the glass, the lack of blood, the whiskey residue. These details nag at me. There is something we have overlooked, a flaw in the killer's design. I nodded, my exhaustion tempered by admiration for Holmes's relentless mind. And the notebook? Shall we share it with Lestrade? Holmes's smile was wry. Lestrade would only muddy the waters, Watson. No, this cipher is ours for now. The police lack the imagination to see its significance. We shall guard it closely until its full meaning. To sleep. The words of the cipher echoed in my mind. Meet at midnight. Crystal carriage. Trust no one. Chapter 6. The Shadowy Syndicate. The fog that had cloaked London for days showed no sign of lifting, as Sherlock Holmes and I ventured into the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel, the heart of the city's underbelly. The air was thick with the stench of coal smoke, rotting refuse, and the faint tang of the Thames, carried on a damp breeze. It was early evening, and the gas lamps cast feeble pools of light, barely piercing the murk that seemed to mirror the mystery we pursued. The deciphered note from Sir Reginald's notebook. Meet at midnight, crystal carriage. Trust no one. Weighed heavily on my mind, as did the ominous reference to the Saffron Veil, a name that hinted at a sinister force behind the railway magnate's murder. I, Dr. John Watson, clutched my revolver beneath my coat, a precaution Holmes had insisted upon, though his own weapon was his razor-sharp intellect. Holmes, clad in a rough dockworker's jacket and cap to blend with the locale, moved with the quiet assurance of a man who knew every cobblestone of London's darker corners. Watson, he said, his voice low as we navigated a narrow alley. The Saffron Veil is no mere rumor. My inquiries have confirmed its existence. A secret society with tentacles in commerce and crime. Their meeting place, a warehouse near the docks, is our destination tonight. We shall infiltrate it and learn their purpose. I nodded, my nerves taut. And if we're discovered? These men sound dangerous. Holmes's eyes glinted in the dim light. Then we shall be dock workers seeking a night's pay, nothing more. But I suspect they guard their secrets poorly in the presence of their own. Stay close and speak little. Our journey led us to a dilapidated warehouse on the edge of Whitechapel, its walls stained with soot and its windows boarded, save for a faint glow escaping through the cracks. The air was heavy, sending a chill through me. The crystal carriage served its purpose, a spectacle to warn others. The grand consolidation of the railway lines will proceed, and our influence shall extend unchallenged.
Another figure, his voice trembling, replied, "But Cresthaven grows bold. He demands a larger share, threatens to expose us if we refuse." The leader laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "Cresthaven is a tool, nothing more. He believes he controls the board, but we move the pieces. The saffron veil shall dictate the terms, and the railways will bend to our will." Holmes's eyes narrowed, his hand tightening on my arm. "Listen, Watson," he whispered. "This is no mere rivalry. The saffron veil seeks to monopolize the railway industry, using murder as a means to an end." I nodded, my heart pounding. The mention of Cresthaven confirmed his involvement, but the scope of the conspiracy was staggering. The Saffron Veil was not just a criminal syndicate, it was a shadow empire, manipulating commerce for power. I strained to hear more, but a sudden noise, a crate shifting nearby, drew the attention of the group. The leader's head snapped up, his eye scanning the darkness. "Who's there?" he barked. Holmes acted swiftly, pulling me deeper into the shadows. "Stay low," he hissed, and we moved silently, weaving through the crates toward another exit. The cloaked figures spread out, their lanterns casting flickering beams that danced across the walls. My pulse raced as we reached a side door, but a heavy footfall behind us signaled pursuit. Holmes pushed me through the door, slamming it shut and jamming a piece of wood beneath the handle. "Run, Watson," he urged, and we sprinted into the fog, the alley a maze of shadows and echoes. The sound of boots followed, but the mist was our ally, cloaking our movements. We ducked into a narrow passage, pressing against the damp brick wall as our pursuers passed, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies. Holmes's breathing was steady, his eyes alert, while I struggled to calm my racing heart. When the danger had passed, we made— "Or merely a pawn?" "A pawn, I suspect," Holmes replied, pausing to examine the cigarette case we had recovered from Barlow. "His ambition blinds him to his role. The Saffron Veil used him to eliminate Sir Reginald, but they will discard him when he outlives his usefulness. The murder in the crystal carriage was a message to other railway magnates, to Cresthaven, to anyone who dares defy them." I frowned, the pieces of the puzzle still elusive. But how did they manage it? The locked carriage, the glass walls, how could a murder be committed unseen? Holmes's eyes gleamed with that peculiar intensity that signaled a breakthrough. "The carriage is the key, Watson. Its transparency is its deception. We assumed the glass walls made the crime impossible, but what if they were designed to distract us from the true method? The smudge on the glass, the lack of blood, the whiskey residue. These are not anomalies but signposts. Tomorrow we must return to the carriage and examine it anew." He sat at his desk, pulling the ciphered notebook and the charred letter before him. The Saffron Veil's sigil appeared on Barlow's note and in Sir Reginald's warning. "They are bold, Watson, but not infallible. Their arrogance will be their undoing." I leaned back, my mind racing. The warehouse meeting had revealed the scope of the conspiracy, but it also raised new questions. Who was the leader with the saffron scarf? What was the grand consolidation? And how did the crystal carriage, with its impossible murder, fit into their plans? Holmes, as ever, seemed to see the path ahead, while I stumbled in the fog of uncertainty. As the clock struck midnight, Holmes continued his work, cross-referencing his files on secret societies with the new information. I retired to my chair, my notebook open, recording the night's events. The Saffron Veil loomed like a specter, its motives clear but its methods obscure.
The crystal carriage, with its glass walls and hidden truths, remained the heart of the mystery, a puzzle that only Holmes's relentless logic could solve. Chapter 7. A False Lead.
Veil. Holmes looked up, his eyes sharp with purpose. "Watson," he said, "the saffron veil's audacity is matched only by their cunning. Their talk of a grand consolidation reveals their ambition, but we lack the specifics of their plan. Today, we pursue a new lead. A railway porter who claims to have seen a woman in a saffron veil near the crystal carriage on the night of the murder. It may be a thread to the truth, or a snare set to mislead us." I frowned, the mention of a woman adding a new layer to the puzzle. "A porter? How did you come by this information?" Holmes tapped a telegram on his desk. "One of Lestrade's men, overzealous in his duties, sent word this morning. The porter, a fellow named Thomas Craddock, approached the police with his story. He claims to have seen the woman loitering near the private siding at King's Cross, just before midnight. We shall meet him at Covent Garden Market, where he frequents between shifts." I set down my cup, my curiosity piqued. A woman in a saffron veil. Could she be a member of the syndicate? Holmes's lips twitched in a wry smile. "Or a fabrication, Watson. The saffron veil's sigil is too conspicuous to be flaunted openly. We must tread carefully lest we chase a phantom." We donned our coats and ventured into the streets, where the fog had lifted enough to reveal the bustling life of London. Covent Garden Market was a riot of color and sound, its stalls laden with apples, cabbages, and flowers, vendors hawking their wares with boisterous cries. The air was thick with the scents of fresh bread, fish, and the tang of coal smoke. Holmes navigated the crowd with ease, his eyes scanning for our quarry. I followed, my hand resting on the revolver in my pocket, a habit born of our recent dangers. Near a stall piled high with turnips, we found Thomas Craddock, a wiry man in his 40s, his railway uniform worn but clean. His eyes darted nervously as Holmes approached, his manner direct but disarming. "Mr. Craddock," Holmes said, "you have information regarding the night of Sir Reginald Marwood." "Else?" I asked. Craddock shook his head. "No, sir, just her. I told the police, but they didn't seem to think much of it." Holmes's expression was unreadable, but I sensed his skepticism. "Very well, Mr. Craddock. Did anyone approach you after you reported this to the police? Anyone offering payment or threats?" The porter's eyes widened, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Well, sir, now you mention it. A man came to me yesterday. Didn't give his name, but he slipped me a sovereign and said to keep talking about the woman. Said it was important to set things right." Holmes's lips curled into a grim smile. "A sovereign for a story. Most illuminating. Thank you, Mr. Craddock. You've been most helpful." As we left the market, the noise of the vendors fading behind us, Holmes's pace quickened. "A classic red herring, Watson," he said, his voice low. "The woman in the saffron veil is a fiction, designed to divert us. The saffron veil syndicate would not expose their sigil so brazenly, and Craddock's tale is too convenient, too neatly aligned with our inquiries." I frowned, struggling to keep up. "But who paid him? Cresthaven? Or someone within the saffron veil?" "Precisely the question," Holmes replied. "The payment suggests someone with means and motive, someone who knows we are closing in. We must test Craddock's story. But first we return to 221B to cross-reference his description with our suspects. Back at Baker Street, the fire was burning brightly, and Mrs. Hudson had left a tray of sandwiches, which I gratefully accepted. Holmes, as usual, ignored the food, his attention fixed on his files. He pulled a dossier labeled Suspects and began flipping through pages of notes on Alistair Cresthaven, John Barlow, and Percival Grayson. The woman Craddock described could be a fabrication, but let us assume for a moment she exists. Lady Eleanor Marwood herself wore a veil when she came to us, though not saffron. Could she be our attention to a phantom woman while the real culprits cover their tracks? Exactly, Holmes said, lighting his pipe. But every misdirection leaves a trace. Craddock's sovereign came from someone with access to wealth, someone who knew of our investigation. Cresthaven is the obvious candidate, but the saffron veil's leader, the man with the saffron scarf, cannot be discounted. Holmes rose, pacing the room. We must return to the crystal carriage tomorrow. The smudge on the glass, the lack of blood, the whiskey residue. These are the true clues, not Craddock's tale. The carriage holds the secret of how the murder was committed, and I suspect a mechanism we have overlooked. I nodded, my thoughts turning to the transparent walls of the crystal carriage, a paradox of visibility and deception. And the saffron veil, how do we pursue them? Holmes paused by the window, the fog outside now a faint haze. We draw them out, Watson. The syndicate believes they control the board, but we shall turn their own tactics against them. A trap, carefully baited, will reveal their hand. As he spoke, I felt a surge of admiration for his relentless mind, which saw through the fog of lies as clearly as a beacon. The porter's story, though false, had confirmed the saffron veil's reach, their willingness to manipulate even the smallest players. The mystery of Sir Reginald's death was no longer just a murder. It was a battle against a hidden empire, fought in the shadows of London's railways. Chapter 8. The Midnight Confession. The fog that had clung to London like a persistent specter had begun to dissipate, leaving behind a chill that seeped into the bones. At 221B Baker Street, the fire in our sitting room burned low, casting long shadows across the cluttered shelves and Holmes's chemical apparatus. The revelations from our investigation, the saffron veil's plot, the false lead of the railway porter, and the ciphered message urging Sir Reginald to a fatal rendezvous, had tightened the web of intrigue around us. He seemed terrified, Holmes. But of what? Or whom? Precisely what we shall discover, Holmes replied, his eyes gleaming with purpose. Barlow is a pawn, but pawns often see more of the board than they realize. I have sent word to him, through one of my irregulars, requesting a meeting tonight at St. Mary's Church in Whitechapel. A confessional, Watson, is a place where secrets are unburdened, and I intend to hear Barlow's. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by the choice of venue. A church? Will he come willingly? Holmes's lips curled into a faint smile. Fear is a powerful motivator, Watson. Barlow knows we have his cigarette case, and he fears the saffron veil's wrath. A church offers sanctuary, or at least the illusion of it. He will come. We set out as the clock neared 11, the streets of London quieter now, the fog replaced by a crisp, starry night. The hansom cab rattled through the city, past gas-lit pubs and shuttered shops, until we reached Whitechapel, where St. Mary's Church stood, its spire a dark silhouette against the sky. The building was modest, its stone walls weathered by time, but the stained glass windows glowed faintly, illuminated by candles within. We entered through a side door, the air cool and heavy with the scent of wax and old wood. The nave was empty save for the flicker of candlelight on the pews, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. Holmes led me to the confessional, a small wooden booth tucked in a corner, its curtain drawn. "Wait here, Watson," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "If Barlow arrives, he will seek the confessional's anonymity. I shall listen from within, and you keep watch for any uninvited guests." I took my position near a pillar, my revolver a reassuring weight in my pocket, my eyes scanning the shadows. The church was silent, save for the faint creak of the pews settling and the occasional drip of wax from the candles. My heart pounded, the anticipation of Barlow's arrival mingling with the dread of what he might reveal. Then he gave me a note to deliver to Sir Reginald Marwood, sealed with a saffron veil. I didn't know what it said, I swear. It was to arrange a meeting in the crystal carriage at midnight. When I heard Sir Reginald was dead, I knew it was my fault. Holmes's tone remained calm, coaxing. "And who gave Cresthaven his orders? Who bears the saffron veil?" Barlow's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know their names. They meet in secret, in warehouses, in shadows. Cresthaven called them the Order, said they'd make him rich beyond imagining. But he's afraid of them too. He told me to keep silent or I'd end up like Marwood." I clenched my fist, the mention of the saffron veil confirming our suspicions. Holmes pressed further. "What else do you know of this order? Their plans, their methods?" "They want control," Barlow said, his voice breaking. "The railways, all of them. They talk of a grand consolidation, of owning every line in Britain. Sir Reginald wouldn't bend, so they killed him. The crystal carriage was their stage, to show what happens to those who defy them." Holmes's voice grew sharper. "And the murder itself, how was it done? In a locked carriage of glass?" Barlow hesitated, his breathing ragged. "I don't know, I swear. Cresthaven said it was foolproof, that no one would suspect. He laughed about it, said the glass was the perfect alibi. But I didn't ask how. I didn't want to know." There was a pause, and I imagined Holmes's mind racing, piecing together the fragments. "One last question," he said. "The payments in the ledger, marked J.B. What were they for?" Barlow's voice was barely audible. "For my silence. For Watson is the heart of the matter. The carriage holds a secret, a mechanism or design we have yet to uncover. Tomorrow, we return to King's Cross. The smudge on the glass, the lack of blood. These are not anomalies, but clues to the killer's method." As we hailed a cab back to Baker Street, the starry sky above seemed to mock the darkness of the conspiracy we faced. The saffron veil's ambition, to control Britain's railways through fear and murder, was staggering. But Holmes's relentless logic was a match for their cunning. Back at 221B, he resumed his pacing, the fire casting his shadow across the room like a specter of justice. "Watson," he said, pausing to light his pipe. "Barlow's fear confirms the saffron veil's power, but his ignorance of the murder's mechanics suggests he is a peripheral figure. Cresthaven, however, knows more than he admits. We must draw him out, expose his role in this deadly game." I nodded, my thoughts heavy with the weight of the confession. The crystal carriage with its transparent walls and hidden truths remained the enigma at the heart of the case. As I retired to my room, the echo of Barlow's words lingered. The glass was the perfect alibi. Chapter 9. The Trap is Set. The air in 221B Baker Street was thick with the scent of tobacco and the faint crackle of the fire, which cast flickering shadows across the room as Sherlock Holmes paced with a restless energy that betrayed his anticipation. The revelations of John Barlow's midnight confession in St. Mary's Church had sharpened the edges of the mystery surrounding Sir Reginald Marwood's murder. The Saffron Veil, a shadowy syndicate bent on controlling Britain's railways, had orchestrated the crime, with Alistair Cresthaven as their instrument. Yet the mechanics of the murder, committed in a locked glass-walled crystal carriage, remained elusive. I, Dr. John Watson, sat by the hearth, my notebook filled with details of our investigation, from the ciphered note to the ominous saffron sigil. We shall spread word of a breakthrough in the case, a piece of evidence that threatens to expose the entire syndicate. The crystal carriage, with its transparent walls, will be our bait. I frowned, the logistics daunting. But the police guard the carriage. How will we arrange this without arousing suspicion? Holmes smiled, a rare glint of mischief in his expression. "Lestrade owes me a favor, Watson, and he is not above a bit of theatrics when it serves justice. I have already sent word to him requesting the carriage be left unguarded tonight, save for a few trusted constables hidden nearby. We shall leak a rumor through my irregulars that a hidden compartment in the carriage has been discovered, containing proof of the Saffron Veil's involvement. Cresthaven, or his masters, will not resist the urge to destroy it." I nodded, impressed by the audacity of the plan. "And we'll be waiting to catch them in the act?" "Precisely," Holmes said, moving to his desk to scribble a note. "We shall conceal ourselves within the carriage, where the glass walls will work in our favor, allowing us to observe without being seen. The trap is set, Watson. Now, we prepare." The day passed in a blur of activity. Holmes dispatched his irregulars, those scrappy street urchins who served as his eyes and ears across London, to spread the rumor of the hidden compartment. By evening, whispers of the discovery had reached the city's underbelly, from dockside taverns to the offices of the Cresthaven syndicate. I checked my revolver, ensuring it was loaded, while Holmes armed himself with nothing but his intellect and a small lantern, its light shrouded to avoid detection. As night fell, we made our way to King's Cross Station, where the crystal carriage stood on its private siding, its glass walls gleaming under the gas lamps like a jewel in the darkness. The constables, briefed by Lestrade, had withdrawn to strategic positions, their presence undetectable to the untrained eye. The air was crisp, the fog now a faint mist, and the distant rumble of trains echoed through the station. Holmes and I slipped into a predator for its prey. At last, a shadow moved beyond the glass, a figure approaching with cautious steps. My heart raced as the figure paused, glancing around, then produced a key that glinted in the lamplight. The door opened and Alistair Cresthaven himself stepped into the carriage, his face taut with urgency. He carried a small crowbar, his movements swift as he began prying at the mahogany panel beneath the seat where Sir Reginald had been found. Holmes's hand tightened on my arm, a silent command to remain still. Cresthaven worked feverishly, his breath visible in the cold air, muttering to himself. It must be here. They said it was hidden here. His crowbar caught on something, and a faint click echoed through the carriage. A small panel slid open, revealing a narrow compartment, empty, save for a scrap of paper Holmes had planted earlier, inscribed with meaningless symbols to lure the bait. Cresthaven cursed under his breath, seizing the paper and tearing it to shreds. "A trick," he hissed, his eyes darting around the carriage. "Who's there? Show yourself." Holmes rose, his silhouette sharp against the glass, his voice calm but commanding. "Good evening, Mr. Cresthaven. You seem distressed. Perhaps you were expecting something more incriminating in that compartment." Cresthaven froze, his face paling as he recognized Holmes. You meddling fool. This is none of your business." "On the contrary," Holmes said, stepping forward. "The murder of Sir Reginald Marwood is very much my business. You arranged his rendezvous in this carriage, delivered the note through your pawn, Barlow, and ensured his death. But the Saffron Veil's plan is unraveling, and you are caught in its threads." Cresthaven's hand moved to his coat, drawing a pistol. But before he could aim, I leapt forward, my revolver trained on him. "Drop it!" I barked, my voice steadier than I felt. Holmes raised a hand, his expression unruffled. "There is no need for violence, Watson. Mr. Cresthaven trapped as Barlow." Holmes signaled to the constables, who entered and apprehended Cresthaven, cuffing his wrists as he glared defiantly. "You'll never stop them, Holmes," he spat. "The Saffron Veil is everywhere." As the constables led him away, Holmes knelt by the open panel, his lantern illuminating a narrow trapdoor in the carriage's floor, cleverly disguised by the wood's grain. "Ingenious," he murmured. "The killer entered from below, struck Sir Reginald, and escaped, leaving the door locked and the glass unmarred. The transparency was their alibi, Watson." I stared at the panel, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. "And the Saffron Veil? Will we find their leader?" Holmes rose, his expression resolute. "We are close, Watson. Cresthaven's arrest will rattle their cage. The trap is sprung, but the hunt continues." Chapter 10. The Final Deduction. The fog that had plagued London for days had finally lifted, leaving the city bathed in a pale, crisp light that seemed to herald the clarity we now sought. Back at 221B Baker Street, the fire roared in the grate, casting a warm glow over the familiar clutter of books, papers, and Holmes's chemical apparatus. The trap we had set in the crystal carriage had borne fruit, with Alistair Cresthaven's arrest revealing the hidden panel that had enabled Sir Reginald Marwood's murder. Yet the shadow of the Saffron Veil lingered, their mysterious leader still at large. I, Dr. John Watson, sat by the hearth, my notebook open, pen poised to record the culmination of this intricate case. Sherlock Holmes stood by the fire, his lean frame radiating quiet triumph, as Lady Eleanor Marwood sat opposite, her face a mixture of grief and anticipation. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, her voice steady despite the strain in her eyes. "You have apprehended Mr. Cresthaven, but my brother's killer remains at large. Can you bring this matter to a close? I must know the truth." Holmes's eyes gleamed with that peculiar intensity that signaled a mind fully engaged. Transparent walls suggested an impossible crime. No one could enter or leave unseen. Yet Sir Reginald was found stabbed, the door locked, the key in his pocket. The police, led by Inspector Lestrade, were baffled. But the solution lay in the carriage's design. He pointed to a sketch of the carriage, highlighting a hidden panel in the floor. This trapdoor, concealed beneath the mahogany, allowed the killer to enter from below the carriage, strike Sir Reginald, and escape without disturbing the lock or glass. The smudge on the glass, which I noted during our initial inspection, was from a gloved hand, fine leather, suggesting wealth and care. The lack of blood on the floor, despite a heart wound, indicated the body was moved slightly after death, likely to conceal the panel's use. Lady Eleanor gasped, her hands clasping her reticule. "But who wielded the dagger, Mr. Holmes? And why the Cresthaven crest?" Holmes's lips curled into a faint smile. The dagger's crest was a deliberate misdirection, a red herring to implicate Alistair Cresthaven. But Cresthaven, while complicit, was not the mastermind. His role was to arrange the fatal rendezvous, using his secretary John Barlow to deliver a ciphered note. "Meet at midnight. Crystal Carriage. Trust no one." This note, found in Sir Reginald's pocket, was encoded to ensure secrecy. But it lured him to his death. He paced, his voice growing sharper. Barlow's confession in the church revealed Cresthaven's involvement, but also his fear of the saffron veil. Our trap in the carriage confirmed it. Cresthaven sought to destroy planted evidence, believing it threatened the syndicate. He admitted to the hidden panel, but claimed ignorance of the leader's identity, a man known only by a saffron scarf. I interrupted, my mind racing. "Then who is this leader, Holmes? The man in the warehouse, the one with the scarf?" Holmes nodded, his eyes narrowing. "The leader of the saffron veil is a figure of cunning and influence, hidden in plain. Leader sought to eliminate Sir Reginald, who refused to join their consolidation. The crystal carriage was his brainchild, but Grayson knew its secrets, including the hidden panel, which he used to commit the murder. The whiskey residue in the tumbler suggested a meeting, a moment of false trust before the fatal strike. I stared, the pieces falling into place. But the porter's tale of a woman in a saffron veil, that was Grayson's doing? "A distraction," Holmes said. Grayson paid the porter, Thomas Craddock, to spread the story, hoping to divert us. His mistake was underestimating our persistence. The cigarette case, the smudge, the panel. These were the true clues, pointing to a killer who used the carriage's transparency as his alibi. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. "Then Grayson killed my brother himself." Holmes nodded gravely. He entered through the panel, struck from above to explain the dagger's angle, and exited, leaving the door locked. The Cresthaven crest was his flourish, a taunt to shift blame. but his arrogance betrayed him. His payments to Barlow and Cresthaven left a trail, and his presence in the warehouse, cloaked in a saffron scarf, sealed his guilt. He turned to the chalkboard, drawing a line connecting Grayson to the saffron veil. This morning I sent word to Lestrade, who apprehended Grayson at his home. A search revealed documents bearing the saffron sigil, confirming his leadership. The saffron veil's plot is undone, and justice will be served. Lady Eleanor wept, her shoulders shaking. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. My brother can rest now, knowing his killer is found. Holmes's expression softened, a rare moment of empathy. Your brother was a man of principle, Lady Eleanor. His refusal to bow to greed cost him his life, but it has exposed a conspiracy that might have ensnared countless others. I leaned back, marveling at Holmes's genius. The crystal carriage one cuts through the fog of deceit.